Welcome back to Analytical Strategy. Today we're going to be doing the very first tier list based on all the winners of the game. So we've just had the second episode past the merge in Survival Winners at War, and it is a great season so far. So I'd like to delve into my favourite winners and rank them based on this tier list that I've found. Now this is all of them from Season 1 all the way to Season 39. Before I get started, just a quick reminder that if you like the content, please subscribe and comment, as I'll be having more videos coming every single week. Please remember this is also just my personal opinion, and there may be some disagreements, which I'd love to hear about as I like hearing other people's perspectives. But remember, this is just my opinion, and I had to make some really tough decisions about which tier to put them in. So there is 6 ranks within this template, those being S, A, B, C, D, and didn't deserve to win. And as I mentioned, I had to make some really difficult choices about which tier to put each player in, because as they are all winners, funnily enough, they are all really good players across the board. Everyone who I ranked higher than a C, I actually classify as a really quality player, and everyone who is a B or higher, I think is like top notch. So splitting winners into these categories is actually much harder than it looks, and I think they all have they have to have some sort of knack for the game to get the W. So we're going to just jump straight into it, and the first cab off the rank is Wendell. Now Wendell played in Ghost Island, and he was the first person to ever receive a tied vote and then get the win along with his good buddy Dom. Now, Wendell and Dom clearly dominated this season of Ghost Island, and they were the clear 2 candidates to win the game from beginning to end. I personally think Dom is a better player, but I'm going to still be putting Wendell in a B category. I think he completely belongs in a B. I don't think there's any other leeway around this. He's got really good social elements for the game, and yeah, he's just a top tier player overall. Now, it's really difficult to make these judgment calls because we are basing this on the edit, and we really don't get insight into the full perspective of each player's game. So compare Ghost Island to Winners at War. Ghost Island, he was crazy humble. He didn't really get much backlash within the edit at all. And in Winners at War, he came off as this really arrogant, evil guy. I don't think that's the case. I think he probably played pretty similar both times, but we just saw the good sides of him in the game that he won, and we saw the bad sides of him in the game that he was aligned with his ex-girlfriend, Michelle. Now, clearly him and Michelle were tight the whole way through. They voted the same when they were together, and they didn't want to turn each other. The vote Wendell was voted off, Michelle wasn't in on the loop. So I think the edits can be quite deceiving of people's character at times. And I do think Wendell is a really good player and deserves that B ranking. So the next player we're going to go into is Chris Underwood. So spoiler alert, he is the only player that I'm putting in the didn't deserve to win category. He was on the edge of extinction for the majority of the time he played. He barely played the game, came back for 1 episode, and he was voted out like 2 or 3 episodes into the season. He definitely didn't deserve to win in my eyes. There were people who played the whole game within edge of extinction, made it to the end, had decisive decisions when it came to every vote. And that's why there's some of these players that I'm going to include in this D category that I am not including in didn't deserve to win, because they actually played the whole game. And even though I didn't think they were the best player of the season, I think every season the winner is the winner. But in this case, I'm shocked that even some of the returning players, such as Aubrey and co, voted for Chris to win. I think the edge of extinction is a major downfall within Survivor. I think being able to live on an island with the jury the whole duration of the game clearly gives you an advantage when it comes to the final 3, if you can make it there. But yeah, Chris, I don't think much more needs to be said. He is a clear didn't deserve to win. Up next, we have the winner of one of my favourite seasons, David versus Goliath, and that is Nick. And similar to Wendell, for me, he just slots straight into that B category. I think he's got a really good knack for the game. I think the move that he made when he got out the Big John was one of the better moves the game has seen. Splitting the minority vote is something that we haven't seen before. So when the idol was played on Christian, they had backup plans if the majority alliance did play an idol. really smart, and I think he's got a really good knack for the game. From what we've seen within Winners at War, I think he's a little out of his element, but I think that is probably due to everyone having all these pre-existing relationships, and he is the most recent winner in this season. So he's still finding his feet. He's still getting to know all these people, whilst these people might have known each other for 10, 20 years. So we can see him sneaking up in conversations, and we can see him trying to find his footing a little bit. But I think overall he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's got a pretty good mind for the game, and it'll be interesting to see how he continues to play as the season pans out. Up next, we have Sarah Lucina, the winner of Survivor Game Changers. For me, I was debating a little bit between the A and the B category, but she's going to be the first person that I put in the A category. Within Survivor Cagayan, she was the middleman. She was in the middle of the two alliances, and it had someone like Cass that really cost Sarah her position in this game. When she came back in Survivor Game Changers, she was ruthless. She was backstabbing her friends left, right, and center. And it's clear that when she plays with this cutthroat mentality, she is one of the more elite players that the game has seen. I think she has a phenomenal social game. As we see within Winners at War, in the pre-game, Sarah was everyone's first boot. And this is something that I really respect in gameplay, is if you're everyone's first boot going into the season and you're still here when it comes to merge, it really shows how good you are, and shows how good you are socially. The scene with her and Tyson going back and forth was one of my favourite scenes of the season so far. And one other thing is her relationship with Tony. So within this season, we haven't really actually had much discussion of pre-existing alliances leading into this season, and the pre-existing alliance of Sarah and Tony has been outlined within the story of the game. So I do think it'll play a big role in the game moving forward. So I think she's going to do, well, she's already done a lot better than I thought she would do, but I think, yeah, she really has a really good way of interacting with people, a really good strategic mind, and therefore she's a really top tier Survivor player. So I think she deserves that A ranking. Up next, we have the winner of Healers vs. Heroes vs. Hustlers, and that is Ben. Ben, for me, is a clear C ranking. I think he lacks a little bit socially, although in the beginning of Heroes, Healers, Hustlers, I think he played the game quite well. He positioned himself really well within the Heroes tribe, and he had really good inroads with everyone within their tribe, and him and Chrissy really ran the game at the beginning of that season. Towards the end of the game, I think he lacked a little bit socially as the game went on. He relied on idols in order to get to the end, and then there was the twist in the Final Four Fire-Making Challenge, which ultimately got him the win. I think Devon was the best player of that season overall. But I think he's better than what a lot of people give him credit for. He's still there in Winners at War at the moment. And then people like Boston Rob and whatnot give him a bad rap, and that makes him look worse than he actually is. But based on his game, I think overall, compared to a lot of these other winners, he does deserve this C ranking. But I think he's a lot better than what people give him credit for, and it'll be interesting to see how he goes through the remainder of this season. Now, after Ben, we have the first boot of Winners at War, and that is Natalie Anderson. So I think she was a really unfortunate boot. For me, she slots in alongside Wendell and Nick within this B category. The fact that she was on a tribe with Jeremy, I think, really hindered her game this season. The fact that it's Winners at War and all these people have these pre-existing relationships. Unfortunately, the fact that she was on the same tribe as one of the biggest pre-existing relationships in the game with her and Jeremy. Everyone knew she was super tight. And it was also unfortunate she was on the same tribe as someone like Adam, who has knowledge about all of these players really in-depthly, probably more than anyone else on the season. So the fact that all that coincided within the one tribe was probably the reason that she was the first boot, but I don't think this really hinders her ranking for me. I think she still slots in that B ranking. Her game within San Juan del Sur was really, really, really good. The idol play on Jacqueline was elite. It really pulled her out from the pack and showed the rest of the jury how much she wanted to play and how much she wanted to win. So yeah, don't underestimate Natalie. She's a challenge beast. Wouldn't be surprised at all if she returned from the edge this season. Really unfortunate that we didn't get to see more of her, but she is still a very, very good player and deserving of the B ranking. Up next, we have the very first winner of the game, and that is Richard Hatch, who is obviously an S ranking, straight into that S tier. He designed the game, basically. He was the first person that created an alliance. It's difficult to know when that strategy would have come into place if he didn't create it. It's very obvious now, but he was the only person in his season that thought of it. And you've really got to reward the player for what they were dealt with at that point in time. So he was dealt a brand new game. People are put on an island. You vote people out. That's the rules. He manufactured that into what the game is today, creating alliances, creating these social dynamics to move you forward in the game, and you've got to give him mad props for that. When he came back in Survivor All-Stars, obviously he's a little bit arrogant. It's part of his character. And I think that could hinder himself if he were to come back again. He just thinks he's the best thing in the history of the world. But he is, yeah, he does have a really good mind for the game. He's super charming, and if he can tone down that ego, he has an ability to win a lot of times that he steps out on the field. So he's a clear S player. Set the tone for the history of the game, and yeah, you got to put that into the top tier. Next, we have another old school winner who is Ethan Zon. He just slots straight into that B category for me. I think he's pretty similar to Wendell. He's just crazy sociable. Everyone wants to get along with him. You just don't want to vote Ethan out. I mean, even in this season, I don't think he really did anything wrong. He was an early boot, but he was just on the wrong side of the numbers. A lot of the old schoolers were clearly outnumbered in the tribe divisions, and he was a part of that. I mean, he didn't want to turn on Rob or Parvati. They didn't want to target either of those in case there was an idol or something like that. So they played it safe by voting out Ethan. But it was really disappointing to me. I really want to see how he would do within this season if he gained a bit of momentum. So it was unfortunate that we didn't get to see that. We do get to see some nice moments of him being really vulnerable with the difficult times that he's had to go through in order to be able to play. But yeah, it was just really disappointing to see him go out so early. I think he is a really, really, really good player. He's really sociable, and unfortunately he just didn't get that momentum, which is really disappointing to see. But yeah, really like Ethan. Hope he gets another chance in the future. Next is another old school player, and that is Vesepia, the winner of Survivor Marquesas. I'm putting Vesepia in the C tier. For me, it's honestly a little bit difficult to rank her. I think she's a really, really, really under the radar type of player. She flips between alliances to further herself in the game. But overall, that's what worked for her. It got her to the end, and it got her the win. And she did have some difficult competition. I think like Kathy Fabric O'Brien is a really, really, really good player. Boston Rob was obviously within this season as well. So for her to get to the end and give her credit, I think you got to give her massive props. But compared to some of these other winners that we'll see in the S, A, and B tiers, I think she slots into that C category quite nicely. Up next, we have another old school player, and that is Brian Heidik from Survivor Thailand. For me, he just slots straight into that S category. He absolutely toyed with everyone within his season. Mr. Freeze, it was a business trip for him. He had his skates on. He was sailing all the way to the end. He knew exactly who to pick within his crew to get to the end, and people who were happy with fourth, people who he knew he could take to the final two and absolutely steamroll. He obviously said a lot of things within the show and a couple of events that have happened after the show where he will probably never play again. But putting all that stuff aside, he is a really, really, really good Survivor player. And yeah, he just absolutely dominated his season, although it's a season that I don't really enjoy and don't go back to watch too often. You got to give him credit where credit's due. He played a phenomenal game, and yeah, he dominated, and he is absolutely deserving of an S tier. Which brings me to Jenna Maraska, the winner of Survivor Amazon. She is the first member of the D tier. Now, going back to this season, Rob Sestonino clearly ran the game. For me, he played one of the best games in the history. He got pipped at the post in the final three, and then Jenna took Crazy Matt to the end, and obviously anyone would win against him. So I think she has a lot of good characteristics for the game, but I also think she plays with her emotions a little bit too much. She really got pissed at Rob when he voted against Alex and got out her friend of the game, like saying you can turn on your friends, blah 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 blah, in order to progress. It's a little bit contradictory when she was doing the same throughout the game. Um, Rob wasn't happy with fourth. Rob wasn't happy with third. He really wanted to get to the end and win, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to do so. But Jenna pipped him at the post, was able to win that final immunity challenge and bring Matt to the end and get the win. It was really disappointing that we didn't get to see more of her within Survivor All Stars when she came back, due to some family issues. But yeah, overall, I think she's a good player for the game. I don't think she's a great player for the game, and therefore I'm going to put her in the D category overall. So on the other side of the coin, an old school female winner is Sandra Diaz Twine. Now she is obviously listed here twice, due to being the only person so far to win 2 seasons. And obviously, if you win 2 seasons, you're straight into the S category. Now, a lot of people frown on Sandra's game, think she didn't do too much strategically to get to the end, but her strategy of anyone but me obviously worked for her twice and got her the crown twice, and therefore she deserves the reign of the Queen of Survivor. A lot of people are frowning on her again within Winners at War, saying she quit the game. I personally don't think so. I wish she toughed it out a couple of more days so she could have got on the jury, but there's no way she was winning herself back in the game. I mean, look at that challenge that Tyson had to win to get back in. Sandra had absolutely no shot. She had done everything that she had to do within Survivor, and going into retirement as the only 2-time winner, and the only 2-time winner that will probably ever happen without an all-winners cast. You got to give her massive props and a big shout out to Sandra. She is deserving of the S tier, and is probably one of the top 3 players that has ever played the game. And yeah, she's an absolute gun, and unfortunately we probably won't see her again if she says she's going into retirement. But the 4 seasons that we've seen her play is really great watching, and yeah, big up to Sandra. Well done. So after Sandra is another old school female winner, and that is Amber now Moriano. Unfortunately, she slots into the D category alongside Jenna for me. I think Rob pretty much dragged her to the end, and got her the million, which is awesome for her. They've got a great family, and they've been able to start a life together through Survivor, which is absolutely amazing. But for me, she fits in that D category. It was really disappointing not to see more of her within Winners at War. I would have actually liked to seen her being cast and Rob not, considering how often Rob has played before, to see if she actually could make some headway. But both of them being cast on the same season, they were obviously going to get chopped early. Because they're married, they're going to work together throughout the duration of the game, and a pair is obviously too dangerous within Survivor Winners at War. So she got the boot early, and it was disappointing that we didn't get to see more of her, because it would have been good to see her actually play without Rob, because the last 2 times she has played, it has been alongside her husband. So gonna put her within that D category, and yeah, hopefully she can work some magic on the edge in the remainder of the season. Up next, we have the winner of the 2nd season of Survivor, and that is Tina. I'm putting Tina within the C category. She's played 3 times in the Outback. She played like a motherly figure sort of role. She was really under the radar and was able to convince Colby to take her to the end, as she won that season just by 1 vote. In All Stars, she had a pretty short-lived game. She was the first winner voted out. I think a lot of the winners, other than Sandra, obviously, it's very difficult to get to the end and get the win. So seeing her as a target early in All Stars wasn't overly surprising. And then she was able to return in Blood First Water, which she did quite well in. She got pretty deep, but yeah, she was voted out, was able to return to the game, and then inevitably was voted out again, as she had a lot of friends on the jury. I just think, the type of player that Tina is, that if she played 100 times or something like that, I don't think she would go too deep too often. But yeah, got to give her credit. She has won the game and has been able to return twice. So yeah, big up to Tina, but I think, compared to a lot of the other winners, again, I think she fits in this C category quite well. Up next is the winner of Survivor Vanuatu, Chris Doherty. This one might surprise you, but he's one of my favourite players ever. I'm going to put him in the A tier. I'm really disappointed that he didn't come back for Winners at War. It was actually quite surprising to me. I thought he could have got a shot. But I think in Vanuatu, he probably played the best. It was probably the best story of a winner that Survivor has seen in my eyes. Like in the first episode, he couldn't even get on the balance beam. He cost his tribe the win, and he was on the chopping block to get voting off. But it's outwit, outplay, outlast. It is now balance, and he was able to manipulate all the men and proceed to the merge. By the time in the latter stages of the game, he was against 6 women. He was able to flip the women on his side and then get all the way to the end. So I've got to give massive props to Chris. I think he's a really, really good player. He's really charismatic. And yeah, he's got the charm, and he was able to work his way to the end, have a really good final jury speech, talk to each player individually and why they should vote for him. And I think that's part of the game that's underestimated, and I think he deserves a spot in the A tier. He's probably my second favourite character of all time. My favourite I'll talk about shortly, but yeah, massive props to Chris. I love him. Disappointed he didn't come back, and hopefully he'll get another chance in the future. Up next, we have the winner of Survivor Palau, which is Tom. He slots right beside Chris in the A tier. He is obviously quite known for his leadership capabilities within Survivor Palau. Pretty much ran the game from start to finish. I think he was an immunity beast as well. I think he won like 5 individual immunity challenges or something like that. And he was able to convince Ian in the final immunity challenge to pretty much sacrifice his spot and take Katie to the end, which is something we've really never seen happen again. And yeah, he's just really has a good knack for the game and a good way to interact with people. It was unfortunate we didn't get to see much of him within Heroes vs Villains. He did play an idol correctly and flip JT over to vote out Sari. And it's disappointing that we didn't get to see him within Winners at War. I think he would have added quite a nice dynamic to the season with his type of persona and characteristics. But overall, he's an amazing winner. He dominated the season that he played, and he is absolutely deserving of being an A-tier Survivor winner. And that takes me to Danny, the winner of Survivor Guatemala. She obviously had a very big break between her original season and the Winners at War. I'm going to put her alongside Tina in the C tier. I think prior to this season, I would have had her a little bit higher. Either B, potentially A, probably B. But after seeing her at Winners at War, I think she's pretty much the only player so far that has really made a fatal error in their gameplay. She got way too paranoid early on, threw her closest alliance members' names out from what we saw, and that inevitably caused her to get voted off of this season. I think her game in Guatemala was underrated. It was a really big underdog story. I heard that she wouldn't tell production the type of moves that she wanted to make, so within tribal councils that Jeff and other members of production couldn't bring up her strategy and way moving forward. Not selecting Rafe to go to the end with her and sitting next to Steph, even though she had an agreement with Rafe, I think was the correct decision. Ultimately got her the win. But yeah, it was disappointing the way that she went this season. I had her actually in probably my top 3 winners picks of the season, but yeah, she went out quite early and was disappointing to see, and it was disappointing to see the way she went out. So although she probably would have been a B tier prior to the season taking place, after watching her play, she moves down to a C. But yeah, that doesn't undermine her. She did some good things, but overall, I think she's deserving of that category. Up next, we have Aris, who is the winner of Survivor Panama. Nothing against Aris. I'm going to put him in the C tier as well. Again, these are all Survivor winners. These are all really great players, but compared to a lot of the other players, I'm going to slot him within that C category. I think he's really sociable. I think he's really well liked, and he's quite personable with a lot of the players that he played with within Survivor Panama. So he had a really strong social gameplay. He obviously had that rivalry with Terry, which was great to watch. He was able to knock Terry out at the very end to take Danielle to the end and ultimately get the win. Within Blood vs. Water, his game was a lot less smooth. He was targeted by Tyson quite early on. And ultimately, when he paired up with his brother Vetus, that relationship was too strong and got him voted out of the game, and got Tyson the win. So I think he's pretty up and down. I think he has some really good social characteristics for the game. He's a really well-liked person. But compared to a lot of these other winners, I think he deserves a spot in the C ranking, but nothing against him. I think he has a really good knack for the game, and probably out of all the people within the C ranking, he would be the person that I rank the highest. So he's a really good player overall. Next we have Yul Kwon, who is the winner of Survivor Cook Islands. I really debated between the S and the A tier for Yul, and ultimately I put him in the S tier. I think he is so intelligent, he's so strategic, and within his win within Cook Islands, a lot of people discredit it because he found the idol that could be played after the votes. But again, you got to play the hand you dealt. Similarly to Richard, who was playing against people who didn't form an alliance. He was the first person to form an alliance, whilst Yul was the first person to win the game whilst having the possession of an idol. And he used the idol perfectly. He dragged Jonathan Penner over to form the majority, and he was able to take out the majority alliance due to the fact that he had this idol. So got to give him massive props. Within Survivor Winners at War, he has a really strategic mind frame. You can see the clocks ticking homie over and over and over again. And unfortunately he got voted out again, probably just due to him being an old school player, and probably because he is so much more intelligent than any other player that has ever played the game. He's just a genius. So for me, he's going into the S tier. Disappointing that we didn't get to see him play for too long within Winners at War. Well, I mean, he is still on the edge, so hopefully he gets back in. But yeah, for me, he's an S tier, he's top tier, and I would love to see him play again after this season. Similarly to Yul, the next player, Earl Cole, the winner of Survivor Fiji, I really debated between the S and A tier. Unfortunately for Earl, he's going into the A tier for me, just because the S tier, I have too many players in there by the end of this that I think are more deserving than Earl. He would probably be the top of my A tier list. He was the first person in the history of the game to unanimously win the jury vote. Natural leader, and what's actually crazy is he didn't really have too much knowledge of the game leading into it. He did this all on the fly. He's super charismatic. He had a really good alliance with Yao. He was able to get Yao out at the right time. If Yao goes to the end, he probably wins the game. So Earl was able to chop him off just before final 3, get to the end, unanimously win the vote, and yeah, he is just an outstanding player. Again, another person I really wanted to see in Winners at War. Super disappointed he didn't get the chance to come back. Hopefully he does in the future, because he is an unbelievable player. And yeah, unfortunately I couldn't put him in the S tier, but A tier, almost as good. Good job. Similarly with Earl and Yul, next is Todd, debating between the S and the A. He's going into the S tier for me. I think he played absolutely fantastic in Survivor China. I think he's sort of got the perfect sort of mold for a Survivor player. He was able to grab in the strongest guy. He was able to grab in the weakest girl. He was able to grab in the eccentric people like Denise. So he had all of these people around him that people would target prior to him. He was able to get to the end, and again, similarly with Chris, he gave probably the best final tribal council speech in the history of Survivor. It's really a big part of Survivor is this final tribal council. I mean, players like Russell, probably the best player to be able to get to the end, but he can't appeal to a jury, and therefore it's cost him the game twice. If he could appeal to the jury, he could be a 2-time winner as well. But Todd, able to appeal to the jury better than anyone that I've ever seen. That speech was phenomenal, and it got him the win in Survivor China. Again, disappointing that he hasn't been able to come out since. Obviously, he's had some problems with addiction and stuff since the game is finished. But hopefully, yeah, he'll get a chance in the future. I think he's a really, really, really good player, deserving of the S tier. And yeah, I really like Todd's game in China. Hopefully, we get to see him again. After Todd, we have another clear S tier in Parvati. Parvati dominated Micronesia. She had the Black Widow Alliance, got together all the girls, ran the show till the end, picked apart friends as well, like Ozzy was able to be a part of that fantastic blindside on Eric, convincing him to give the immunity necklace to Natalie within that season. And then Heroes vs Villains, for me, she was probably the best player of that season. Again, another similar to Sarah, someone who was targeted from the get-go. From episode 1, everyone wanted to get rid of Parvati, but she was able to find her way all the way to the end, able to use that double idol play to get out JT, able to get Russell to give her idols, able to use Russell as her little toy, as she said, within her little pet, I should say, within her final tribal council, and she's just super charismatic, super charming. Again, didn't really have much of a chance within Winners at War just due to her overall threat level, but she's an absolutely fantastic player, one of the best players of all time, arguably the best player of all time. So yeah, she's just a clear S tier, and no need to talk about that any further. That leads through to the oldest person to ever win Survivor, and that is Bob Crowley. So, unfortunately for Bob, I'm putting him down in the D tier. Again, nothing against Bob. Think he's probably the top of the D tiers so far. He's the oldest person to ever win the game. He outlasted the rest of his alliance and created some really, really good fake hidden immunity idols. I think he may have created the best and used them the most efficiently out of anyone ever. He had a really good relationship with Sugar, and that helped him take him to the end and become the winner, as the two people he was sitting next to had a lot of blood on their hands. And he's just a really likable person. Yeah, but no offense to Bob, I don't think he's like crazy strategic. I don't think he's like a top tier player. I think he's a good player. We probably won't get to see him play again just due to his age, but yeah, love Bob, love him as a person. Don't think he is the best Survivor player out, but he did get the win. Got to give him credit. But for me, he slots in that D tier overall. Up next, we have JT, winner of Survivor Token Chains. A lot of people are probably going to disagree with this ranking of him. There's a lot of people that love JT. There's a lot of people that hate him. I think he's actually quite a good player. I'm going to put him in the A category. Within Survivor Token Chains, he played absolutely flawlessly. I don't think he got a vote cast against him. He got every single vote for him to win. He had people within the game that wanted to give up their spot to make it to the end so he could make it to the end and win. He was that likable, that good of a person, that sociable. He ticked all the boxes in Token Chains, and he played absolutely phenomenally. Moving on to Heroes vs Villains, he obviously didn't play as well. He made one of the biggest blunders there is in giving Russell the idol, but in my eyes, you've got to remember, he didn't know who Russell was prior to playing this game. I think the move that he made was right given the information that he obtained. It just didn't work out, and if he was right, he'd be a two-time winner and probably one of the best players ever. Instead, that move cost him the game, and people are calling it one of the biggest blunders in history, which it was. But I think it's that type of analytical thinking that really pushed the top tier players overall. Survivor Game Changers, obviously an absolute blunder of a season. Played really bad. He was on the minority within the alliance, so going into that tribal where Malcolm was eliminated, he didn't want Malcolm to go, and it inevitably cost Malcolm the game. Next tribal, he didn't take his idol where he was on the bottom of the alliance and could have played it and saved himself and made it to merge. So I do think he has had a downward slope overall, but I think when you even out his games over time, I think in Token Chains it was like S+++ tier. It was like super high level. Heroes B, and then like Game Changers like a D. So overall, I'm going to give him an A. I think he's got yeah, really good smarts for the game. I'm kind of talking myself into him being a B tier, but I'm going to leave him in that A category overall. Yeah, I think he's a lot better than people say he is now, but I can completely understand why people would give him a lower ranking than I have overall. Moving on to someone else who also had a close relationship with Russell, and that is Natalie White. She obviously goes straight into the D category. She didn't do too much within her season. I think Russell saying her best move aligning with him was her best move, which I completely agree with. It was. I think being able to put up with Russell for 39 days, you deserve the win with that alone. People who turned on him, they were chopped. He was clearly the best player of that season. But people who turned on him, they got chopped off. She didn't do that. She was able to stay loyal. She was able to put up with his arrogance, able to put up with his abrasive nature. And she was able to say things like, I don't think Russell's that well liked. If I sit next to him at the end, I'm going to win. And she was right. I wish she sort of played that up a little bit more. Like if she was in the tribal final tribal, rather than pitching her game, saying like I deliberately played the GOAT strategy. I think that is a completely respectable strategy if you deliberately play the GOAT. So I think if she did that, she would have placed a little bit higher on my board. But Overall, I'm going to put her in the D category. I don't think there'll be too many disagreements with that. Again, it would have been interesting to see her play in Winners at War. I'm not too disappointed she didn't get one of the spots, but it would be interesting to see her play again and if she could adapt to the gameplay overall. But yeah, based on what we've seen of her so far, I think D fits perfectly. Up next, we have Fabio riding on his white horse all the way to the D category. I don't think he's the most intelligent player that we've ever seen play the game. I think he's that type of player that can get to the merge, win a bunch of challenges, and get to the end and just be that likable and that funny of a guy that people will vote for him. It's completely respectable strategy. I just don't think it's going to work too often. There were players like Marty who would approach Fabio and say he's a Grandmaster chess champion and that he should jump on board, which Fabio just took hook, line, and sinker when it clearly wasn't true. So I think his strategical elements of the game would use a lot of work. I think he's a pretty fun character to watch. I just don't think he's that good of a game player. So again, deserve the win. Everyone who gets the win deserves the win, but other than Chris, but I don't think he would do too well overall, and for that reason, I think he's a pretty clear D category out of all the winners so far. Up next, we have Boston Rob, who obviously slots straight into that S category. He is probably the most well-known Survivor player in the history of the game. I'm probably not as high on Boston Rob as the average person. A lot of people think he is the best player that's ever played the game. I don't think that is the case. I don't think he is as adaptable as a lot of the other top tier winners. He plays a pretty similar game every time he comes out. If he's on the right side of the numbers and he gains momentum, he's hard to stop. But when he's on the wrong side of the numbers, I don't think he has some of the capabilities to turn the game around like the other winners, a few of the other winners that we have and we'll talk about later on. Although in saying that, he is as close to a 2-time winner as you can get. He got his girlfriend/wife to the end alongside with him. The difficulty in doing that is astronomical. It's pretty unbelievable that he was able to achieve that, and getting Amber the win is basically as good as getting himself the win. And then he was able to win again in Redemption Island, obviously. That season was made for him. When you go up against yourself on one tribe, Russell on the other, you're all already painted as the hero between the two returnee players. And he was able just to pinpoint a lot of the new players with strategic minds and get them out quite early. So he's obviously a phenomenal player, top tier. Interesting watching him in Winners at War so far. The thing with the fire tokens on the edge was great viewing, and he was clearly a step ahead of everyone else, as he is quite a lot of the time. So he's definitely deserving of the top tier, even though I don't think he is the best player of all time like a lot of people do. And moving along, that brings us to the winner of South Pacific, Sophie. Prior to this season, I probably would have put Sophie in the C tier, but she is absolutely dominating Winners at War. I'm putting her up in the B tier. I think part of the reason I would have put her in the C tier initially is just due to her edit. Again, we don't get to see everyone's game. We don't get to see their full game, and she was pretty underrepresented on her winning season, which is pretty rare to see. But seeing her be like a narrator within Winners of War, seeing her strategical mind, I think, she's deserving of being up in that B category. I think, as I mentioned, she didn't get the edit that she really deserved within South Pacific, and I think that's likely due to there being a lot of dominant characters within the game. Like, you had your Aussies, your coaches, and they just took up a lot of the airtime. So her being able to manage these big personalities within South Pacific, you've got to give her massive props. And the way that she's playing the game in Winners at War, she's a real focal point. She's someone that a lot of people are coming to for advice. She was able to get that second half of the idol from Kim early in the game, even when they didn't really look like they were talking that much. So, for me, she's definitely moving up a notch, and I think she could potentially move up another notch if she continues the way she's playing. I think she's doing absolutely phenomenally, and I can't wait to see her as the season pans out. And speaking of Kim, here she is. For me, she's automatically an S tier. She is the best player of all time, if you ask me. Her game in One World was flawless. She didn't put a foot wrong. She had everyone wrapped around her finger. There's a reason that season is considered one of, if not the worst season of all time, and that's because Kim just ran laps around everyone like no tomorrow. She went into Winners at War as one of the biggest threats in the game, and she's still there. She's somehow completely under the radar. No one's really bringing her up. We haven't seen too much of her within the edit, which doesn't give me much hope for her in winning the game. But if edit aside, she's in one of the best positions to win the game within the season. I think she's potentially playing the best out of everyone at the moment. And I think she played the best game in history within One World. For me, she's the best player ever. Hopefully she gets a little bit more airtime as the season goes on. And yeah, she's just a phenomenal player. She can look you in the eyes and you just believe everything she says. She's just so likable. So massive credit to Kim. For me, yeah, as mentioned, she's the best player ever. Definitely S tier. And yeah, look forward to seeing how this season pans out for her. Which brings me to another super underrated player in Denise Stapley. I was really debating between an A and B tier for Denise. I ultimately settled on B, unfortunately, for her. There was an interview with Malcolm on Rob Has a Podcast not too long ago where he mentioned, like, what sort of season won't Denise do well in? And when you think about it, she's always going to go deep in nearly every season that she's cast in. She's super likable. Everyone would want to align with Denise. I think she's doing really well so far. That idol play on Sandra was unbelievable television. It was so good to watch. She could have held on to that second idol, but I completely understand her reason for playing it. She's doing quite well so far within Winners at War, and I think within her original season, she went to every single tribal council. I mean, that is insane. Her tribe lost every single immunity, and she had to go to all of them, and she was immune within all of them. So you got to give massive credit when something like that happens to you within a season. I think she's super underrated. Unfortunately, couldn't squeeze her into that AT category, but I definitely think she deserves a B at the very minimum. Yeah, such a great player, and I really hope she does well within Winners of War as well. Up next, we have one of Jeff's favourites in John Cochran. For me, he is a B tier player. He was sort of one of the original super fans that won the game when he played in South Pacific. I think he played pretty poorly. He struggled with his social game quite a lot. But then I think Coach made an outstanding move in being able to bring him over when the merge hit to swing the numbers in his side. But ultimately, he went to Redemption Island and was always going to lose the duel against Ozzy for him to get voted out. I think it was in 8th place overall. But in Caramone, he was really, really good. It was surprising. He was a challenge beast, which not many people would have anticipated. And as players like Cochrane, when they start winning challenges, he's still not going to be a challenge threat by perception, just due to the way he looks and the way he holds himself. So ultimately, he had control of the game pretty much the whole way through within Caramone. Using players like Philip as the figureheads within the tribe, and his partnership with another person he played with in Survivor South Pacific in Dawn. They worked really well together and were able to get all the way to the end. And again, I think he won in a unanimous vote. So anyone who wins in a unanimous vote, you've got to give massive credit for. There's not many people who have perfect games, so big up to Cochrane in that season, but I think within the 2 seasons combined, he slots into that B category quite well. So yeah, good job, Cochrane. Following Cochrane, we have the winner of Blood vs. Water, who is Tyson. Tyson, I was debating between S and A. I think he fits in the A category a lot better, so I will slot him in there. His first season within Token Sheens, he was obviously quite young, a little bit full of himself, crazy athletic, like unbelievable within immunity challenges. But yeah, sort of like the way he talked to Sierra, undermining her a little bit and then getting voted out was great to watch. I think ultimately he is potentially the best character we've ever seen. He would probably be in my top 3 along with Chris and the next player we're going to talk about. Yeah, he's just unbelievable to watch. It was disappointing seeing him get voted off so early in Winners at War, but he's back in the game now, and he's somehow not a target, so I think he could do quite well. He was also in my top 3 picks with Danny and, again, another player we're going to talk about. But yeah, he's just so sociable, so likable. He was his own demise in Heroes vs Villains. But then in Blood vs. Water, he played absolutely amazing. He once he saw his partner get voted out, it really changed his concept of the game. He didn't want to be that character anymore. He wanted to be that cutthroat player, and he was able to get everyone on his side. He's just so likable, so sociable, and so athletic and so good in challenges. He was able to get all the way to the end and get the win. So he's one of my favorite players that's ever played. Both due to his character and his strategic elements. So I think overall, given all the games he's played, he fits in that A category quite well. But completely understand if you would put him higher. He's amazing to watch. And that brings me to my favorite character in the history of the game, and that is Tony Vlachos, the winner of Survivor Cagayan. Tony is the best. He's an S tier. He is phenomenal. He is my winner's pick of Winners at War. People think I am absolutely crazy for saying that, but him, Tyson, and Danny I had in the top three before the season started. He's the only one I think has a realistic chance of winning at the moment. He's actually positioned really well. As I mentioned, they've sort of bought into the fact of him and Sarah's pre-game alliance, which they haven't really shown much of anyone else. Him with the ladder is just like unbelievably funny. It's probably me just loving Tony as a massive Tony fan that's really put him as the winner of this season. I think him being a two-time winner alongside Sandra is really funny. And I just think he's crazy. He's just crazy. His game in Cagayan was absolutely nuts. He was just bouncing back and forth off walls. He was making splash acts. He was talking in llama. He's easily my favorite character in the history of the game, and which is why Cagayan is probably my favorite season ever. I love Tony. I really hope he continues to do well within Winners at War. He's really toned it down this season, put himself on house arrest, but he just can't help himself. Like, even when people are going to vote, he's hiding off in his spy bunker trying to listen into conversations when really he should be socializing with people. He's just phenomenal television. I love him to bits. He is an S tier player without question. I can't wait to see how the season progresses with Tony. Again, he's my winner's pick. I hope he takes it all the way. For him to be one of the only two-time winners would be phenomenal. And I love you, Tony. I hope you kill it in the remainder of the season. And after Tony, we have the winner of Survivor Worlds Apart, which is Mike. I think you really have to slot Mike in the same category as Ben. So I'm going to put him in the tier C. I think he is really good at some social components of the game. I think he lacks a little bit of social awareness sometimes, but his way of winning challenges and finding immunity idols and finding a way to protect himself, you've got to give him massive credit for. He was able to do that, get all the way to the end, and then get the win against really good opposition in Carolyn as well. Like, Carolyn played a really good game, and Mike was still able to get the win against her. So got to give him credit for that. There were some times throughout the season, though, I do think he lacked some gameplay, like early on in the season, telling everyone to gather firewood when people were just trying to chill, and saying, vote me off if you think I work too hard, and eating a scorpion and throwing up on day one, and going for the advantage in the auction and then backing out of getting the advantage. So I think a lot of his gameplay was a little bit sporadic. But overall, he was able to win out on all those challenges, save himself with an idol when he needed to, and get the win. So, I think similarly to Ben, you got to put him in the same category. I do think he has a good knack for the game. I just don't think he is as good as some of these other winners. So I think I will slot him in that C category, and hopefully we'll get to see him play again one day. And after Mike, we have the winner of Survivor Second Chance. That is Jeremy. For me, Jeremy is just a clear A tier. Slot him right in there beside Tyson. He's just so unbelievably likable. He's just the kind of guy that you want to align with, the kind of guy that you want to be friends with, and you don't want to turn your back on him. Like, people use Jeremy as a meat shield, such as Stephen has mentioned on Rob Has a Podcast numerous times that he wanted to align with Jeremy because he thought people would vote Jeremy out before him, but he's just so likable. He's just so sociable. He's able to connect with people on a real human level, and I think that is key to being a really good Survivor player. It was unfortunate in his first season that he went out so early. Him and Josh, I think, were the first two boots after merge, and they were the two people in the early stages of the season that I thought had the best chance to win. But coming back in Second Chance, he really showed his capability for the game, took him all the way to the end, was able to get every single vote, and that was against crazy good competition. I mean, Spencer, I think, played phenomenally that season. I think Tasha has some good knack for the game. So to get a clean sweep against those two players is quite impressive. And he's in a really, really good spot in Winners at War. Like, he's the guy that everyone wants to come to. He's the guy that everyone wants to socialize with. Everyone wants to talk strategy with. He's just a really nice, genuine person, and that can't go undermined in Survivor. So, really appreciate Jeremy. I think he's a really good player of the game, and I think he's just a clear A tier player overall. Up next, another male within Winners at War, and that is Adam Klein. For me, he slots into that B tier. Spoiler alert, he just got eliminated from Winners at War, but he got eliminated in the best fashion maybe that I've ever seen. He had one of the best arguments with Ben in Tribal Council history, back and forth, while everyone else is talking gameplay around them. He attempted to find an idol within the podium, which a lot of people are laughing at him at. I give him massive credit for even thinking on that level. And I think, players that think on that level are really sort of the top tier players of the game. So he could see that someone played an idol previously. He could see that the idol that Denise shared with him previously was the exact same shape as this item which was on the podium. So for him to go and try and grab that and play it, I think fair enough. Like, you gotta give him props. Like, no one else would have thought of doing that, and if it worked out, it would have been historic. It would have been phenomenal. So it's again those type of moves that I really give credit for. I think he is a super fan times 10. He knows everything about everyone, and unfortunately, it didn't work for him this time. Can't see him getting back into the game. But I really enjoyed watching his game this season, and he's just fun to watch, and hopefully we'll get a chance to play again. But his win in Millennials Gen X was pretty up and down. Winners at War, he was pretty up and down, but again, he's just constantly thinking and constantly playing, and you got to give him credit for that. So good job to Adam. Unfortunately, you're out of the game or on the edge at the moment, but hopefully we still get some good moments from you for the remainder of the season. Up next, we have the winner of Island of the Idols, the most recent winner of Survivor, and that is Tommy. Tommy, I'm slotting into that B category as well. I think he's crazy sociable. I think he's quite similar to like the Ethans, the Wendells, the Natalies of the world in terms of social gameplay. He was able to get all the way to the end without any advantages or idols or anything like that, which is pretty rare in this day and age. So you got to give Tommy massive credit for that. He's just so sociable, super nice. It was unfortunate to see this season get overshadowed by both Dan and everything that happened with him, and also Rob and Sandra took a big chunk of this season. So we didn't get to delve into his gameplay as much as I would have liked. But he's just so sociable, super nice guy, like unbelievably nice guy, and he played his situation really well, and he got all the way to the end and got the win. So you got to give him credit. Again, hopefully he gets to come back and play without all the drama and all the Island of the Idols and all that stuff. But overall, I think he's a really good player, and he deserved the win within that season. And the final contestant we're going to talk about is Michelle Fitzgerald, along with Tommy, along with Wendell. She is that type of player, and she is locked into that B category. A lot of people disregard her win within Co-Wrong. They think Aubrey should have taken it. It's probably fair, but I think her social gameplay is on another level as well. As we have seen within Winners at War, she can relate to people extremely well. It's good to see her have a little bit of a narrator role within the season as well. I think the edit with her and Wendell was a bit overdone. Obviously, they were working together for a lot of the time that they were together, and they really edited as they were pinpoint against one another. They really needed that villain character in Wendell to come out. But overall, Michelle, I think, is a really good player. Similarly, I heard same sort of story with Danny, that she didn't tell production a lot of her moves within Survivor Co-Wrong, which therefore wouldn't have come across in the edit, and therefore would have undermined her character a little bit. So I think she's a really good winner. I think her social game is on another level, and therefore she should slot in with everyone else within that B tier category. So interested to see how she plays for the remainder of Winners at War. And there you have it. That is my overall tier list for the winners of Survivor to date so far. So I think it looks pretty solid. I think it seems about right. I think it's pretty unlucky for Earl not to get in that S tier. Maybe R should move up to the B. Maybe JT should move down to the B. But I think overall, it's really difficult to put these winners into subcategories as they're all such great players of the game. I'm really interested to see how Winners at War pans out for the remainder of the season. My money is still on Tony. Really hope he takes it all the way and gets the win. But yeah, overall, I think this seems like a pretty solid tier list. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you would have done. If you have any links to your own tier lists, whack them in the comments. I'd love to check them out. But yeah, overall, thank you very, very much for watching. Really appreciate all the support so far. Remember, if you do enjoy the content, to hit that subscribe button. And I look forward to bringing you plenty more content moving forward, whether that be more tier lists, Survivor quizzes, Survivor fantasy seasons, podcasts, you name it. I will try and bring it to you. So thanks again for watching. Look forward to speaking to you soon. This is Analytical Strategy, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.